Without further ado, I just would ask my panelists, each one to introduce themselves and proceed with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Buddy. My name is Marcus Stilling. I'm working for Harvey since 5.5 years, and I'm leading in Munich the vertical research activities in conjunction of 5G. So this is also the aim of my presentation, to bring together IoT and 5G a little bit closer, because it was mentioned a little bit that 5G may be the enabler for IoT business, and this is fairly true. So let's first start with the first slide. So what you see here actually is an assessment on the embedded systems or the Internet of Things, how we see it evolving in the future. So you see different time zones here, and when you observe here is that the connectivity so far has never played a big role here actually, and the devices have been so far not really much connected when you consider, for example, cars. And we expect in the future that the dominance of connectivity will certainly has to be increased. That means more data will be exchanged with the backends, but also between, let's say, devices as such. So direct communication between robots, cars, machines will certainly increase. But we see also that the complexity of devices will be further enriched and be increased. So you will have more processing power, you will have more, let's say, capable data fusion algorithms. And all these things make the design of IoT more, let's say, cumbersome and more challenging. So the need for connectivity is more and more increased, because there's also a tendency to take out, let's say, processing requirements from the local device to the back end in order to save also money. So you might also have stupid devices and more complex devices like cars. On the other side, you have sensors. And therefore, you will have more and more also offloading of processing from the forend to the backend. This we also foresee. This is a quite, let's say, engineering, type of slide. My background is engineering, but I think this brings it to the point about connectivity and the interworking of connectivity and the artificial intelligence or the functional model, information model, what you see here. For example, of a robot, it could be a robot car. And you have, of course, also the interaction with the human. This could be driver, this could be also operator in the manufacturing hall. And you see here in the red figures the assessment of communication requirements on bandwidth, on delay requirements. And this device, what you see in the middle actually here, denoted by different colors, is actually the brain of the local device, and it communicates with other devices, maybe on the road, maybe in the same fabric hall. And it also will be connected to the so-called backend or cloud, where you download, let's say, less time-critical information for the maneuver, for instance. So this is a very complex situation, but very comprehensive. And it brings together, let's say, the idea that when you optimize the algorithms, because you get more information from other environments, from other robots, then this will have an impact on the IT, on the functional model of the device as such. So connectivity will have a change of say, the algorithms which are working on the device, and this is important to consider. So far, I mentioned in the beginning, connectivity hasn't played a big role, for example, in cars. So the automation platform in cars must be further enriched by the communication of other cars, or to other cars. Very important to consider. This is a snapshot on from the Car Communication Consortium, let's say, how they consider the future services. So you see basically the first two pillars on the left side, you mainly send around warnings between cars. Please pay attention, there could be accident in front of you. But the future will be that you will have also more communication between cars. You will have negotiations between cars. You will have exchange of trajectories between cars to agree on corporate maneuvers. And this must be facilitated by more and more bandwidth, but more and more complex communication between, let's say, the devices or the cars. And you see actually here different phases. The right phase is more or less the fully accident-free self-autonomous driving car. And this is, let's say, the aim where we are all going. And this has a lot of implications. This is challenging for regulatory requirements. It's challenging for new business models. Taxi driver may become unemployed. No one knows this. So many implications are not foreseeable right now, what happens with that. But you see communication will play a fundamental role, and this can be facilitated by 5G. to enable the fast exchange, low latency exchange between cars. Very important. Here is, let's say, a further resolution on a car, how a car works together with the automation platform. So the automation platform is the so-called brain, what you have seen beforehand in the first slide. And this automation platform receives information from other cars, from roadside units, from traffic lights, whatever. And it's processing it and has actions on the braking system, on the steering wheel, on the accelerator. And these things will also be exchanged with other cars. So the maneuver what you plan will be exchanged with other cars, and you must more or less agree on the joint maneuver when you have, for example, lane merging or you have takeover of other cars. So this is very complex. And you see the left side is communication, the right side is also communication. And this requires very low latency and guaranteed latencies. It is important to consider what 5G brings. 5G should bring guaranteed latencies even over a large scale of kilometers. So for example, you guarantee 10 milliseconds over a distance maybe of 20 kilometers, or even shorter or longer. And this is today not possible with 4G or with 3G because it's just best effort services. When you have a high load on the system, then the delay is unpredictable. So you don't know whether it takes seconds or 100 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds, the current system. But for industrial applications, you need a very concise, I would say, jitter-free delay between A and B. This is one important 5G requirement. And this is only can be accomplished when you consider also IT, processing capabilities on the nodes, not only transmission capabilities. So it's also getting very complex. This is somehow a snapshot from a famous German car maker. Unfortunately, we got this only in German slide, German, let's say, description. But the idea is that you see all these assistance systems actually, so takeover assistance, braking assistance service, and then the 5G or the automation platform works on these assistance drivers and helps the driver to perform better or even completely take over the control of the car. This is important to consider, and you see how complex it is actually, how many subsystems you have on the car, and how many, let's say, interworking will be there between the subsystems and the communication and the automation platform as such. As a conclusion, actually, what we see, 5G and IoT, we see actually that, I mentioned this already, we need a scalable and reliable protocol for guaranteed delays, even over large areas or short areas. And we need also to define 9%, 99%, or even more reliability to guarantee really the performance what manufacturing requires or what the industry in the car industry requires. Or even energy, smart grid is also a famous example for that. So we need also to define carefully the interface between the vertical subsystem, let's say of Siemens, and the 5G subsystem working together. So you have a joint interface, and therefore it must be jointly designed in the future. This is different also to 4G. 4G, you just developed it for smartphones, and now you must consider the interworking of the machine and the radio modem. We'd also consider that we have 5G in multi-link routers in the future, so we'll have more passes between the devices, you have more communication means, also a very important topic. I think I don't need to consider the other issues here, you can read it your own, but we need to work on these topics very well to have a perfect integration. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good timing, thank you. So I'll ask Hans, please. Could you follow on? We'll have the questions at the end, because we are trying to manage the time as best we can, so we want to know what sort of timing budget we have for the questions. So please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Just see if my slides could come up. Yes, my name is Hans Schaffers. I'm working at the Aalto School of Business in Finland, in the area of innovation and knowledge research, and also at Saxion University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands. Yes, my talk is titled Creating Societal Value with Internet of Things for Smarter Cities. In the last couple of years, 10 years or so, I've been involved very much in living labs, in smart cities and in the FIRE program. FIRE is Future Internet Research and Experimentation. I'm the coordinator of the Amplifier Support Action. And that brings me also to the thought that testbeds, experimentation facilities, are quite important also for the Internet of Things community. So we see a lot of roadmaps being developed. It would be interesting idea to align these roadmaps. We have seen roadmaps for Internet of Things developments, even in various areas. In Amplifier, we also developed a roadmap for the development of testbeds, experimental facilities until 2020. And we have worked already with the 5G community and also with the Internet of Things community to see what the interfaces are between the roadmaps. So in general, I would say it would be interesting to strengthen this alignment work, to see where we could reuse and share facilities. The FIRE program, for example, has developed quite important projects from point of view of Internet of Things. The Smart Santander project, for example, well known to many of you, which created 20 or 30,000 sensors in the Smart Santander and in other cities to perform sensing experiments. Other projects that are currently running are Fiesta, which is more at Internet of Things and semantic web. The Organicity project, which interestingly takes a very different perspective. It looks much more to Internet of Things in city environments from the point of view of co-creation by citizens. And another project is the IoT labs from Sebastian Ziegler, which you have been hearing this morning. So that's one point. Another point is the point which I should not forget to mention is the issue of skills and education. That's a bit missing in the discussion. Internet of Things for the future, it has huge implications for businesses, for companies, also in terms of human capital. We should not forget that point and pay a lot of attention to skills development in relation to technology development. So there is quite an interaction between research, piloting, testing, innovation and education. And it would be interesting to build bridges to schools of applied sciences, to local networks of companies and so on, to strengthen the link to lifelong learning issues, education and skills issues. So I've missed these issues a bit in the discussions this morning. I hope it could find a place. Another issue to start with is the systems view. We have seen a lot of thinking about systems, more or less from technical perspective. I would like to bring in or to propose also in terms of engineering these technical systems, that we would approach it also from human point of view, from social systems point of view, so that we would try to think in terms of socio-technical engineering. So how that would look like, there are many examples, time is too short to go into that, but I hope we should not forget this issue. Let me then quickly bring up some issues. I have to be very short, I'm very much aware of it. One is, I've taken a close look at the IoT report from Working Group 08, looking into smart cities. And very much it looks like a technology strategy implementation. It's a huge amount of work, and it has well served to prepare the current call on Internet of Things large-scale pilots. I just wanted to raise a couple of questions. The documents, and so the perspective that has been formulated, it highlights a number of important things. The city-centric ecosystem, but it is more or less confined to the technology ecosystem, in my view at least. Of course, it's mentioned the need for combined top-down and bottom-up approach, but how will that be elaborated? What kind of methodologies do we apply in order to create these interactions? That remains not very clear. That remains to be explored, hopefully in experimentation environments. I think the only way to learn is through experimentation. So we also need to learn working with non-traditional methodologies as it comes to engineering, trying to include the social human points of view as well. And for example, in action research or in socio-technical systems engineering, a lot of experience has been developed already, which could be very helpful here. So the technology strategy, it results in a lot of recommendations regarding technology, acceptability, the business views, but how will it connect to more decentralized innovation models, bottom-up, to grassroots developments in cities? That remains not very clear. And maybe it doesn't have that attention because it's really a business-driven approach, which is very understandable. At the same time, cities are social systems, and the issue remains how to engage the citizen level sufficiently. There are a few other initiatives that are quite interesting. The CAPS, it has been mentioned, I think, in the morning by Mario Campolargo. The CAPS collective awareness platforms, which is really taking that very seriously, and how to marry these approaches. So if we take a look at the real problems of cities, I think that's really very needed in terms of the focus areas of Internet of Things. It's very clear: mobility, traffic management, manufacturing, smart cities. Okay, that's fine. If we take a look at cities, we should go deeper and really understand what the real problems are, and who are the stakeholders who are really working with these issues to resolve them somehow. So inner city attractiveness, the innovation ecosystem of cities and their surrounding environments, the regions, the rural areas, the quality of life in cities. I mean, do we hopefully have an answer to the question how the Internet of Things initiatives will generate solutions for these types of key issues of where cities are really struggling with. So I could recommend to take a closer look to the book of Anthony Townsend, the Smart Cities book, 2 years old now, very much rooted in the grassroots approach, really working with communities, with citizen communities, developer communities, hacker communities, and so on. So it would be interesting to marry the more top-down technology strategy-oriented approach with the more grassroots bottom-up approaches that we see emerging everywhere. So cities are complex social ecosystems, so how to deal with it? Can we really do it with the current engineering approaches, or should we change something there? Technology strategy is one view of the city. Other views are the transformation in cities, yeah? The dynamics, the agile, responsive cities that we would like to see. Another view is city as an ecosystem. So there are different perspectives on what a smart city looks like. We should not really select just one of them. We should bring the different perspectives in relation to each other and try to marry the insights that we can discover in more closely looking at them. So change in cities will not come from top down, not from the large-scale experiments only. It will only come if we are able to integrate the top-down and the bottom-up views, and experiments and experiences. So I have to be quick now. Cities are ecosystems, so we should not just look at the technology ecosystem, but also at the network of companies, local agencies, governments, the region surrounding it. So all in all, it looks to me that we should try to bridge the more regional development type of viewpoints that cities are really used to working with the more top-down technology strategy approach, more research and large industry-oriented approach of horizon. So how to marry these approaches? I think the benefit is in the middle somewhere, is in the synergy. So that becomes also clear if you take a look at the development phases of smart cities. Of course, we know all the projects like Intercities, the e-government stuff, the information systems in city business processes, and we see a development going on. I really think the next phase is to empower all the constituencies in the innovation ecosystems of cities. Okay, time is too short to go into that, but a few examples of where we are working with at the local level in the Netherlands. One of our projects is emergency support in cities under uncertainty and incomplete information. We are using wearable systems, sensors in clothing to help local cooperation between different services like fire brigades and other police and other actors in resolving issues. So that could be an instant example of existing Internet of Things applications already. So how to scale up and how to work with other cities in order to increase the impact of such developments. So another example is enjoyable cities, where we are working with sensors deployed in the city with interactive screens in order to take a closer look at behavior of people. Behavior is also a bit missing in the discussion. I think on the one hand, we should think in terms of technology impact, technology systems, but not forget that human beings are part of the whole arena, a part of the whole system. And so we need to find out how technical systems and human behaviors interact and how to make the best out of it. Here we are working with a fireware platform. That brings me to, and with the City SDK tools, as you probably, some of you know, the tools that could be put in the hands of the citizens to create applications based on open data. So that's an example of a more mixed top-down platform development, fireware, and bottom-up use of tools to create interesting applications. The Open and Agile Smart Cities Network is very important development. At local level in the Netherlands, we created a network. I mean, this is a European network, so it's very important. The reason behind the network is the idea of sharing knowledge, sharing technology, sharing experiences, sharing experimentation environments. In the Netherlands, we have a sub-network of 6 cities, and just a few weeks ago, we created a foundation which brings together all the cities and the players in the different cities to create a strong collaborationship, which could also play a role in the international, in the European horizon type of programs. Okay, summary points. I think I touched most of these points already. So I would like to underline, we need different ways of thinking about engineering. We need to bring in the human and social aspects in engineering. We need elaborate, hopefully experiment with socio-technical engineering approaches in order to take more seriously the huge importance of the bottom-up way of working, the grassroots developments that we see everywhere. I think I could leave it with this. Yeah? I mean, all the points are on the slide. So.
Yes.
Okay,
thank you very much.
for your
we can
time.
elaborate. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Hans. That was very good.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I was tempted to say good morning just to check that everyone's awake. I realize that I and the next speaker now stand between you, your networking and their cocktail, which makes it a bit of a challenge. We've taken a lot of information today. I think you've all learned a lot so far today, and we've still got a bit more to learn. Personally, I learned that I'm actually part of Generation Y, thanks to Jackie, so I'm delighted. I'm vintage 1984, so I just about get in there, I think. Taking together knowledge is what we at the European Factories of the Future Research Association do. We bring forward that knowledge to the European Union, through the European Commission, to inform them so that they shape their research and innovation for Factories of the Future, as the program is called, to make it industry relevant. We are an association, I'll make this very quick because it's not a pitch. We're an association of over 150 members with universities, companies of all different sizes and research organizations. We have been created because there is a need, or there was a need and there is a need to shape the research and innovation agenda, as I've said, because the European Union created a research program called Factories of the Future, and this is why I'm here today. It's because, of course, it relates to and it takes in aspects of the Internet of Things. And as it continues to go forward and as it evolves, we'll actually need your input to make sure it even reflects this even better, because digitization, that topic that's thrown around a lot of that term, is of growing and greater importance. And it will change manufacturing a lot. And I don't need to tell many of you here that because you already know that. So far, 208 projects have launched, as you can see there, and over 1,000 organizations have participated. To guide this, we put together a strategic research agenda, a roadmap, which we've already heard about roadmaps, and now I'm going to mention another one. I would divert you to the Factories Future website, or efra.eu, to find out more information. And I'll do that in a few more slides where you can find out more information when I talk about 3 project examples, because I'd like to keep it brief. I'd like my other contribution today will be to give us more time to have a bit of a chat. In this roadmap, we've identified the challenges that manufacturing is facing, the opportunities that it also has, and existing technologies enablers and developing technologies enablers that we can use to meet those challenges and to see those opportunities. We then have defined 6 research priority areas, domains as we've called them, from which annual call topics are taken, and those call topics are can be applied to by people in consortium to get funding to engage in manufacturing research and innovation. So here are those priorities. I can quickly read them to you, very quickly. Advanced manufacturing processes, adaptive and smart manufacturing systems, digital, virtual and resource-efficient factories, collaborative and mobile enterprises, human-centered manufacturing, and of course customer-focused manufacturing. Okay, that's a lot again of information to take in. Again, when you go and find this roadmap online, you can look at the subdomains in there. How does this relate to IoT? Well, I had put down some general points about IoT and thought then I'd just scrap some of them, because I thought after all of today you'd know a lot about IoT. In actual fact, many aspects of the IoT and the IoT discussion, which is well underway, and much of the research innovation and the components relating there, apply to nearly all of these domains. And this research and innovation agenda is really evolving. So in fact, in the coming years, we'll be going back to revisit this during the Factory Future project program lifespan to ensure it better reflects that. Domains 2 to 6, I would argue, are perhaps the most relevant when we come to the IoT discussion. I have 3 project examples I'd like to show you briefly. And unlike a university lecture, I'm not going to read out all of the text there. I can let you read that. But I want you to see a bit of the variety of those components of the IoT within Factories of the Future. And actually, one of the previous speakers, Jacobo from Holonics, it turns out his company is actually involved in most of these examples. The first is to do with injection molding. It's a project called Preview. And if I can draw your attention to those boxes there, data acquisition system, advanced predictive system, and wireless capability, you can see that these are IoT issues within the factory's context. This project is concerned with injecting molding. They want to develop a better control processing system. And they want to reduce setup time, they want to reduce the waste, of course, and increase energy efficiency. That sounds familiar, I'm sure. In this other quick slide, you can see there a very basic diagram, and you can see there aspects of the cloud, you see the smart components, you see the interconnected machinery, and you see the data. And that's just one Factories of the Future project, but there it's ticking the boxes of IoT issues within and without the factory itself. The next example is Manu Intelligence, or I should quickly point out that you have the website there to find out more information. In Manu Intelligence, we're talking about a platform for product service design and manufacturing intelligence engineering. If you've seen the 2 previous points, it goes right across from the design right up to the production and the delivery of a product and its maintenance. And there's one of those lovely complicated diagrams to show you that. There's a platform that supports us all the way through. So it's going down that road of where you track a product from when you design it in response to customer needs, to deploying it, to selling it, to maintaining it, and then to bringing it back around through maintenance, and perhaps even, not in this project example, but in a related field, in Factories of the Future, remanufacturing, to take the components one day when the product comes to an end. The final example there is IRAMP3. This is to do with ramp-up. In this example, we're talking about network-enabled devices, which is quite an interesting feature, I find. They've called them agent-based product devices. To know more about that, again, I point you to the website because I'm not entirely sure what they mean by that. But I did find interesting that they're looking at how to make these things able to adopt themselves in different production settings and configurability. They're using sensors and sensor grids in relation to this. Again, that might sound familiar. But on the very last point, you'll see how they're talking about fast component integration, exchange, as well as rapid adoption throughout the entire manufacturing system. And the point they actually meant is to change in response to customer designs. And when I pointed out earlier to talk about customer-focused manufacturing, which was the last domain in our list of priorities, very much now, as we go forward manufacturing, it's very much going to be taking in information from the consumer as well as from the supplier. And I think that's an important aspect that was already well covered today. So in fact, I suppose I won't go too much far into that. So those are 3 examples. I will, at the end, show you where you can find out more information about all of the Factories of the Future projects, where you can find out more about the organizations involved and those who are really addressing IoT issues, because perhaps you'd like to collaborate with them. We're part of the Alliance for Internet of Things and Innovation. I think you've heard plenty of that today, AOT. We're involved in Working Group 11, and we're in there because we are a community of manufacturing research innovation experts, a community that's very well experienced, and is very curious about exploiting the potential of technologies and enablers. And the Internet of Things is not an exception for that. And you can define the Internet of Things in many ways, but the varying aspects of that is of great interest to our community. And that involvement is also to raise awareness that the European Union has this Factories of the Future program, and it is going to continue for the next 3 or 4 years of Horizon 2020. Now, I realized that earlier the director who was kind enough to come and speak to us from DG Connect was very enthusiastic about the IoT calls. Well, in the Factories of the Future program, we have a digital automation call in the open call at the moment. I'd be happy to direct you to the EFRA website, efra.eu, to find out more about that. But there the Commission is putting funding forward of 53 million to look at digital platforms to integrate manufacturing technologies. So I'd encourage you to look at that, because I feel it's important to point out that IoT is very exciting, Internet of Things is very exciting, but there are already aspects being looked at through an existing and running program with a strong community behind it. Looking forward, the Internet of Things Alliance is going to continue with its bottom-up activities, I'm sure. I don't think we've heard the last of it, of course not. You can find out more about the IoT and FOF, Factory Future ICT topics at the Info Day, which is coming up on the 1st of December. It is going ahead here in Brussels. Please do attend. The 2 call topics that are part of the Factory Future Open Call at the moment include FOF 11, which is digital automation. You can find out more about the EFRA website about this and the call documents. Along with that, information is also available from the Commission's website. We had a big info day where we informed people about the various research innovation topics available to people. Those are available. And on our website, we're supporting online brokerage, or people who are looking for project partners. We very much welcome input from the IoT community, as we are as a community are in general. And my final slide, because I realize the last speaker has a good bit to say as well, is we have created a portal, and there you will find information on all of the Factories of the Future projects. You'll find information on what topics are being addressed by those projects and who's involved in doing what. And you will find some familiar names and some not so familiar names from what I see as a growing IoT community. And there's a website address to do that. Finally, I'd like to say that EFRA as a community, and I believe the European Union's, the Commission, DG Research, DG Connect, would really much like to hear from non-traditional stakeholders when it comes to this IoT topic. We've heard quite a bit from Huawei and a few others earlier, not necessarily manufacturing companies, but now very much involved. You know that other companies elsewhere in America, like Google and Apple, are flirting with the idea of manufacturing. Well, there are lots of telecommunication companies, as they used to be called, and smart companies who are also interested in manufacturing. So we'd like them to engage more with traditional manufacturing companies, with our universities and our research organizations. I've tried to keep it brief. I hope I haven't spoken too fast. I am a native English speaker. And finally, if you'd like more information, please go to our website or drop me an email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. And now for our last speaker. Thanks to the generosity of others, I guess, with the time. You have something like 19 minutes.
Oh, nice.
And I warn you that there may be an interactive scenario involved. We have had a chat. So have your mobiles at the ready. And it's up to you to manage that.
Yeah,
time.
let's see. Maybe we do it. Maybe we do it. Okay. All right. So Thomas Castenius, see if my slide come on. Anyway, I'm CTO for iMinds. It's a research institute here in Flanders. I'm also the vice chairman of Workgroup 7 in IoTi on wearables. Now, instead of running through the objectives and vision and the text we produced in Workgroup 7, I'd like to tell you 2 stories. And maybe do an interactive story, let's say. Just to illustrate a few of the points which we have discussed in the Workgroup 7 about wearables. And the first story is very personal, and it's from this morning. I'll show you what it is. So as an interested person in wearables, I've been using wearables for years. I was a pioneer. I wouldn't say I'm a pioneer, but I was an early adopter about wearables. And the reason was and is still because I want to understand my sleep pattern better. So I bought one of the first available devices to track my sleep. I wanted to understand what affects my sleep, how I can improve it. And I learned a lot about the effects of red wine and coffee on sleep, and so I can discuss all of that in the networking detail. Recently, I upgraded my wearable to one of these Apple Watches over here. And I started to track my sleep with this device. And yes, it's perfectly doable, and it's very interesting. And actually, this is the result from this morning. You see, the date here is actually taken this very morning. And what you see here is how my sleep goes up and down from deep sleep to light sleep. You even see a red one, right? And I was awake. And I actually forgot this morning why I was awake, but now I realized that the kids came along, and I guess a few of you have kids, you recognize the pattern. So this information was known to me, but it's still interesting to see. But what was not known to me before I bought this device is the effect on my heart. So this is the tracking of my heart during night. And when I started to track this, I first thought, Jesus, what is this? You see spikes, right? So my heart rate goes up and down. And I thought maybe there are three reasons. Either I'm dying, right? Hopefully not. Or there's something wrong with the device, or this is simply perfectly normal. Yeah, there are lots of, and some dirty minds have other ideas, I'm sure. So how can I make a distinction between these three scenarios? So I gave the same watch to my wife, and she started to use it as well. And I also encouraged an iMinds professor to also do the same, and he saw exactly the same pattern. We all show the same pattern. The heart rate goes up and down and can go much further up than this. Now, to understand this better, I took this data to my medical doctor and I asked him about it. And he said, Jesus, Thomas, you need to go to a specialist immediately. And he directed me to a specialist. And I still didn't go there because I still want to understand it better. Right, so why am I saying this, telling you this story? There are a few points here I want to make, which we'll see also in the recommendation. The first one is that there is something about privacy. Who owns my data? I don't know where this data is. Is it Apple? Is it the developer of this? Of course, this is very private information, right? But I share it with you since I guess Apple has it anyway. So, anyone can probably see it. But there is something about this privacy about it. I'm quite open about it, but not everyone would be. If I had a big issue, I wouldn't be it. The second one is that all the stakeholders have to be involved. My doctor was completely unprepared for this question. I checked with a few other medical doctors in the meantime, and a few says this is normal. But generally speaking, the medical profession are not prepared for Apple Watches. They are not prepared for this. And this is something we have to take into account when we design large-scale pilots. We as engineers can do this stuff, and we're going to develop it, it works. But when we go to our medical professions, they will say, ooh, what is this? And which also points to the next thing about the business model, because I triggered a lot of action in the Belgium healthcare system, which cost a lot of money. This did not save any money, my friends. This is costing a lot of money. And if we want to use these devices to reduce the cost, we must be able to tackle these questions. We must be able to understand this and bring this back, because otherwise we will have a flood of wearable anxiety coming your way. So be prepared. The medical professions are not. And the third dimension, or fourth dimension, is about medical validation. If you ask Apple, or if you ask Samsung, or probably Huawei, you can probably say for yourself, they would say, no, this is not a medical device. This is just for sport and track fitness and so on. This is not a medical device. And why do they say that? Because it's not medically validated. It hasn't gone through all the certification. Medical certification, if it's a medical device, it has to be medically certified. And that's a rigorous and complex and costly procedure, which will eventually increase the cost of this device. So they don't want that. On the other hand, this result is probably true. And it's probably very useful for our society to track all this information. So the question is how to deal with the fact that suddenly we will have a lot of wearables out there which actually gives valuable health information, but the medical validation is very rigorous, costs a lot of money. So how to deal with that? That's what we sometimes refer to as the second valley of death. The second valley of death for entrepreneurs is the medical validation for wearables, because it's a hurdle for startups. It's actually a hurdle even for the big companies to take this. I also like to talk about a last one. Maybe, shall we try? How much time do we have?
You're okay.
You're okay. All right.
10 minutes.
Okay.
10 minutes.
Okay, we have, so, okay, guys, are you on the internet? All right, let's try something. Can we bring on that question? I'd like to ask you 2 questions, see if it works. Otherwise, I'll show you the... Okay. If you put that live now. So I'd like to ask you 2 questions. If you put that on full screen, does it work? No. Okay. So the first question, while we're trying to get the technology to work, is basically, if a medical professional would tell you that you had to use, okay, more or less it, right? A wearable, would you use it? And can you go to this polleverywhere.wearables, and you have 2 options, whatever device you have, you know, your PC or smartphone, please do it right now and give your votes. Does it work? Can you see it? Okay, let's see if it works. It usually comes in online. So the question is, would you rely on a clinical validated wearables if it was prescribed by your doctor? Is it live? Okay, yeah. All right, so some answers come in. The first answer suggests that yes, I would be willing to do that. You can't, for some reason, see the answer down here. Can we put it on full screen somehow? Yeah, the number 1 is yes, I would. And the number 2, no,
yes.
And not sure. So, and this is actually, keep on voting. We'll go to the next one soon. This is exactly the result we got when we tried it with 150 members of ICT, well, at the conference ICT 2015 in Lisbon recently. Yes, they would trust, or they would use a medical device if the doctor prescribed it. So, okay, good news, my doctor said so, I'm going to carry it. Shall we go to the next question? Okay, the next question is about, would you be prepared to pay for it? And the answers are yes, I would be willing to pay €5 a month. Second is, only if I'm sick. And the third one would be no. Let's see how the answers come in. Yeah, so it's an even game, right? Okay, so there is some who says yes, and a few says only if I'm sick. So you're the good audience. I really appreciate this because, of course, this is very important. Why is this important? Because if we are serious about what we call preventive care, when I say preventive care, I talk about care before you're sick, you should say yes. I'm going to now switch back to the presentation and just briefly show what the results were from this one. Thanks for voting, by the way. Can we go back to the presentation? So in Lisbon, where we tried it, we also got the same results on the yes, and that was a much larger audience. It was 150 people. But it was on the second question, it was a resounding no, only if I'm sick. Of course, and that is an issue. The people, and I don't blame them, but today the general population is not willing to pay for preventive care. They are, okay, I'll flip through this. So here, this was the audience, these were results. Yes, if my doctor said so, but this was the result about the willingness to pay. And this is, I really think you're great guys, but this is 150 people, also professionals, who basically said only if I'm sick. So we have a long way to go, and this is what we're going to try to address in the large-scale pilot on wearables. Just to summarize, I tried to illustrate 5 points. The first one was about privacy. Yes, this is very private data. Who owns it? How we're going to deal with it. The second one, we need to involve all stakeholders. Medical professionals, clinicians must also be involved, otherwise we'll get very wrong results. The third one was about business models. The business model is by no means clear. This cannot, if we want this to save money or be an asset to our society, we must be able to deal with all these questions that come out of the data we get from this. The fourth one was about medical validation and the second value of death. How do we deal with the current policy framework for medical validation versus what we try to do with this stuff? And the last one was the point about prevention. Today, our society is not built on prevention. It's based on that you go to your doctor when you're sick. And we have to change that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right, actually, I think we've managed well, and we're sort of, on time with quite a bit left for questions. I just want to share very briefly, next couple of minutes, my take on today. There have been resonances that have been running, through much of the discussions of this very interesting conference today. And really, basically, it comes to looking at the journey traveled at the development time of what could be the, let's say, IoT value proposition, and looking at what would be the lived experience of people, the quality of experience of people who would actually experience using it. And we can see that today, in this panel, we've had the applications in smart cities, factory of future communications, and health, reviewed and trying to bring out the fact that really it is very important to look at the particular context of application and beware of a lot of issues such as, on the health, we just looked at possibly what you could call shallow value packing versus deep value packing. What's the mission logic of a device? What does it actually provide in terms of value proposition, which is essentially integrating with the current service logic for healthcare and so on. But above all, for smart cities, for example, what do we get in terms of urban diagnostics when we actually deploy IoT? How do we begin to empower the citizens, enhance the quality of their quality of lifestyle, work style, with more awareness of what's going on? And how do we actually match the IoT complexity in terms of latency, constraints, privacy, security, etc., through its socio-technical architecture, through its business architecture, through its ethical architecture, if you like, and the incubation ecosystem that provides the thriving, shall we say, business environment in which these can flourish? How do we actually satisfy these constraints? And above all, then, for adoption, we have to, of course, be aware of different contexts of adoption. The maturity stage model, or what you call it, but essentially, where do we deploy what kind of application to create the right chemistry for lifestyle support, work style support, and, of course, mindful of privacy, security issues. Now, I want to open up the questions to the floor to, really let rip on anything you want to ask. We have got 10 minutes, around 10 minutes, I think, to sort that out. So, any questions, please? So, your questions to the panel, to me, to anyone?
Jackie Taylor, it's a question for Thomas, really. When you do that poll, do you even take just a look at the generations that you've actually got sat in the audience? Because we're finding the evidence varies depending on what social group and also where people live culturally and the demographics.
Yeah. I think... Thanks. And the short answer is no. This poll is mainly to generate some interaction in the audience, but so it's not a very, very scientific one. That said, we have done it a number of times, and the results are pretty consistent, I have to say. So it's surprisingly interesting. Of course, the sample is a bit too small, I would say, but the results are pretty consistent coming in. So yeah, but we should probably do a little more data mining, I think. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Please. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. My name is George Karagiannis, and the question that I have is related to some of the challenges that have been mentioned in the morning, and these challenges are related to actually how to stimulate the partnership between the vertical industries and horizontal industries. Of course, IoTI is doing that, but if you have any other ideas or any other proposals for that, I would like to hear that. That's one question, and the other question is related to how we could stimulate the data owners of certain vertical industries to share their data with other vertical industries. So what will be the incentives to do that for them?
You want to take it?
Yeah, I can start. Oh, and the first question is about how you stimulate the citizens to be more interactive in such a pilot. Is that how I should understand it?
To stimulate the partnership between the vertical industries
Yeah.
and horizontal.
Aha.
In addition to what we're doing in IoT.
Yeah, I just thought IoT is a good example of that. No, but you're right. I mean, even in IoTI Workgroup 7, the fact is that we have very few clinical clinicians today. And it's well recognized. I think it's probably, to some extent, true for some other workgroups as well. And many clinicians don't think like this. So we have to go out and talk to them and educate them and discuss it, because it will come their way. So there's a lot of, marketing or communication efforts that needs to be done from us. We must get out of the ivory tower to spread the word. Yeah? So that's partly what I'm trying to do. And your second question was about how data sharing between. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, this is a very complex question. I mean, it's also who owns the data to begin with. And I just like to say that the first thing is that this idea that the citizen own the data is too simplified, in my opinion. Specifically today, a lot of our thinking is based this consent-based model, right? You click I agree. But what did you agree about? In most cases, you have no clue. Most of the citizens are not at all. They by default click I agree. They get a legal text of 5 pages. So we need to protect the citizens the innocent or naive citizens from this. A lot of these people are also vulnerable. They are sick people who may be sensitive. So I'd like to maybe direct you to that question. How do we treat the privacy of this data, knowing that the consent-based model will not work for debate? But I think that's the simplified question. I didn't answer your question, but I gave you some thoughts. Some other thoughts on this?
Yeah. My experience is that actually you need to understand if there's a problem to solve. And when you talk to sick people, maybe they are more willing to accept wearable devices, to get better monitoring, and then to have better medication. So there must be a win-win situation. And we know from the pharmacy industry, yes, they want to transform the business as well from just selling medicine, also in the future, medicine plus surveillance, supervision. That's a service, and here you can provide, let's say, LT devices, whatever, along with the patient. And then he has a benefit that he has a better life quality, maybe, by having this monitoring device with him. But also in general, things which make fun, like comfort driving, where you have robot cars maybe, and you can push the button and can say, now in the traffic jam, I want to get driven by the car, not driving myself anymore. So this is actually also what people are willing to pay for. So either you have a benefit, this you must understand as individual, you have comfort services, or you have better life quality services. And the money is certainly there where you have the people involved, or you have, let's say, people like me involved. Here, sheer amount of, let's say, devices correlate with the number of people. In factories, I think it's maybe not so promising. Of course, you may have less devices to be installed, but I think the sheer amount is certainly together with cars, but also with wearables, which might help to improve the life quality. So these are, for me, the first two most important fields. So there's no general answer in general.
If I can just add, really, let's start from the givens. The givens are, we have open data, and citizens, as far as the citizens are concerned, they can be prosumers and data traders if data were to be essentially commodified, and that commodification democratized. And so that for a particular workflow, for a value proposition, which creates a service, which has a market value, we could identify a workflow and the particular contribution of data elements, whoever they belong to. They belong to a citizen, or they might belong to a particular enterprise. Then we have some kind of market, approaching some kind of market, which, depending on the context of use, the value proposition can attribute some kind of value to data. Then the market forces should take care of the exchanges within the framework of data privacy. And that really depends on having self-audit mechanisms that ensure that the data value is properly attributed and that there is traceability and transparency in the translation of data element value to the end value proposition, okay? And that the citizen, above all, has got reversibility in their decision about whether or not they want to continue trading that particular data element, the reversible, revocable consent. And so that is, to me, a healthy way of establishing a framework for citizens' share, as it were, for data value, generally. That's how I view it.
Yeah, maybe one remark about the other question that you brought forward, the verticals, the horizontal. That's a very complicated question, and first we should agree on the more precise formulation, I think. In general, I would say, let's see what the verticals could share in terms of infrastructures, test beds, testing environments, tools, methods. Within the FIRE initiative, large-scale initiative on European test beds, there has been paid a lot of attention to the federation aspect of the different test beds across Europe, even collaboration with Japanese, the States, the Genie initiative, also Korea, other countries. So it starts with trying to find out how we can share resources enabling developments in the different verticals. And on top of that, tools could be made available. A lot of tools are available in terms of testing already. But the service orientation of these tools is definitely something to be worked on in terms of these newer concepts as testbed as a service, yeah? Testing as a service. Yeah, from there it could start with, but it remains to be seen what you exactly mean with verticals benefiting from something horizontal. What is your thinking? What do you want to end up in?
Okay, do you want to? Thank you.
Maybe one perspective.
A quick one.
A quick one. iMinds is all in favor of open data, strictly speaking. But in some cases, the data is a bit sensitive. And then there are some very interesting new technologies coming which can protect the privacy of the user, but still allowing for some kind of mining. For example, something called homomorphic encryption will make it possible to actually search on encrypted data. Mm-hmm. That means that you don't share the data, you share the information that is necessary to share, but not the full data set. And I think such solutions can be a breakthrough in privacy. So keep that.
Yes, except they're a bit slow now. Secure computation, as you might say.
That's mathematically
we
work a lot on it. So
I need to. This question, I believe, is Scott David here? Okay, I believe it is a kind of a sequel to the sort of answer I gave already. I have given the answer, I believe, about commodification. Yeah, okay. I think we have dealt with this question already. I would like to go to you're the next, and then we've got a question. Yes, please.
Thanks.
We have 9 minutes, so please.
Okay.
Peter Taffer, journalist for e-Observer. I would like to take up the role of the Eurosceptic taxpayers advocate. And to
Could you speak up, please?
Mr. Kennedy, could you explain to a Eurosceptic taxpayer why the EU needs to be involved in all this? Why not national governments or even no governments at all? I mean, there's been plenty of technologies that have been able to develop fine without government intervention. Mm-hmm. So, why the EU? And to Mr. Schaffers, you said you were using FiWare in the Netherlands for the smart cities. For those of you that don't know, FiWare is also an EU-funded, I guess,
generic enablers.
Box of tools that you can use. Mm-hmm. Is FiWare intrinsically better than alternative open source software applications, or were you persuaded by the bag of money that's attached to some of the FiWare projects to start using those applications?
Okay.
Thanks.
They're a bit more political than I would entertain, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's a very justified question. I've been involved in the Future Internet PPPs for some time, not anymore right now. Here we have to look at what would happen if we would not stimulate these developments. And then looks like it is always very difficult to get people or organizations together to share resources and to really come up with something of interest for Europe instead of their particular interest. So in that sense, the argumentation would be, but of course you would need to study it in much more depth. I hope it will happen, such evaluations, because they are important. The idea that individual parties are looking too much to their own interests should be met with an activity at European level to bring together the different resources, add resources on top of it. Let's not forget Future Internet PPP. It has been funded to a large extent by the Commission, but also by companies and other organizations working on it. So it looks to me that acceleration of developments, creating network effects, which is also not so easy. If you look to the S-shaped curve, it's difficult to launch developments. As soon as they get momentum, of course, then taxpayers' funds we should be very careful as soon as it reaches the state of commercialization. But often the first stage of getting things evolving, getting them on track, it's very important in terms of public funding to...
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly take your second question first. Open source is fine, but as you know, open source offerings are not necessarily maintained, whereas generic enablers are well documented and there is a community commitment to kind of building on those. That's just by the way with respect to the use of those generic enablers. But as far as the first question is concerned, building a gadget is very different from embarking on a socio-technical system. IoT is largely for leveraging not only just for everyday lifestyle support gadgets, what you might think utilities, smartwatch, etc., but also for raising the floor for the people who are the vulnerable, the underprivileged, or the people who need help, assistance, like elderly care, etc. We are facing a lot of pressing, issues. If we had every school leaver deciding to do nothing but take up a career as a carer, we wouldn't have nowhere near enough people to take care of our elderly very soon. So IoT is about transformative government, empowerment of citizens. It often involves a variety of stakeholders, and it is part of policy strategy for enlightened governments. It has to be in order to raise the lifestyle and work style of and essentially automate to support, and that really needs a multi-sectorial, multi-stakeholder involvement. This is why it is different from a gadget, putting your money in a gadget. Okay, I think...
Sorry, could I actually respond directly to the question he pointed towards me? Because actually, I like the question, and it's a bit political, yes, and I cross into that too. The reason why there's funding there is, first of all, it's not really government intervention. Because there's a community out there, if you like, that want this. And there are companies and organizations who aren't interested in borders, quite frankly. They identify the communicator already through existing networks in Europe. And we can define Europe as one will, and it doesn't necessarily have to refer to the 28 member state European Union. So there's that interest there. The use of funding, well, there isn't actually, there is often a problem with national funding when it comes to international or transnational cooperation. And so to bring it to European level allows people simply to facilitate people to cooperate across borders. And just on that point, with this cross-border collaboration, the European Union, as the institution that can channel this, if you like, basically responds to the needs of that community who said, look, you've done your research innovation in the past, perhaps it hasn't been as industry or company relevant or research relevant as it needs to be, now we inform you of what it needs to be, and the Commission will put, say, some money on the table, but it's not a subsidy because it's pre-competitive. But my ultimate point would be it's because there's a community out there that wants it, and they're not necessarily particularly political about it either. They want to do business and they want to compete.
And actually, as Hans pointed out, leveraging the network effect to encourage co-evolution of technological capability base. Thank you.
Thank you, President.
5 minutes.
Yes, just two short comments. Thomas, regarding your presentation, I'd just like to inform you that physician training is often questionable in medical schools. I know, well, it depends on the medical school. This said, there shall sooner or later be brilliantly customized interactive software that shall enable any patient who wishes to become more or less just as theoretically competent as his or her physician. So I should have some hope on that score. Okay. The other is, yes, Hans and Jackie. I noted there was a similarity between your presentations. I'm interested in smart cities. Our project Pilot Scheme 1 is achieving and sustaining city society well-being quality of life with smart cities. A typical, holistic, multicultural, integrated, interdisciplinary project that considers the village, city or town as a patient, where you necessarily have to integrate the bubbles together. So it's a provocative question, and I'm wondering, well, have you ever thought of collaborating with Jackie?
Yeah, not really, because I didn't know of Jackie's work. But there are countless initiatives across Europe in terms of smart cities, countless. I mean, Jackie, I think, has talked mostly about UK. Nesta is an interesting organization which has also looked into different initiatives. But across Europe, there's a huge portfolio of smart cities projects. There is a network, the OASC network has now gathered 60 cities, more than 60 cities, in sharing their infrastructures, their innovation work, and so on. So I think of course, I mean, what should I say? I mean, it's important that we find each other, that we create the networks that allow us to benefit from each other's work and to cooperate. So there's a lot going on in Europe right now at this point. But it's not a new topic. It's a quite old topic already, smart cities. So I think we should not forget that smart cities is rooted in urban development issues, urban issues. That's the basis. It's not about technology only. Yeah. It's about the key issues in cities, urban development, poor cities, inner city development, entrepreneurship support. All these issues are key. I mean, if I talk with people from cities, we are talking about these issues, not about some very beautiful Internet of Things platform. Yeah. So some of these different areas need to merge to find out how can we improve things. Sure, for sure, yes. Well, we are doing our best across Europe to build these networks, so it would be very good to hear more about what's happening everywhere. Yeah.
Thank you. We have only 2 or 3 minutes. I have to hand over to the chair to wrap up the proceedings, but I have to sort of refer to Scott David's comment regarding the workflow embedded analysis of value proposition flows that I was talking about. And he is quite right in saying that these possible exploitation routes, if you like, for data and whatever value proposition there might be in IoT have to be carefully and risk-aversively examined for potential, candidate exploitation routes, because vested interests may have different perspectives on what constitutes value and what constitutes essentially equitable value sharing, equitable sharing of the proceeds of such enterprises. I agree with this, and that is why I said that self-audit mechanisms, transparency, traceability, and above all, accountability engineering of these systems has to be paramount. Now, what does that mean? Actually, I think that really sums it up. Answerability and accountability in what we do in our design decisions, and having a transparency in everything, system of systems, end-to-end, in the evolution, the innovation, conceptualization, innovation, and deployment, and then runtime performance of these systems. If we were able to architect not just a system, but a system with its own self-audit and traceability over this, really the story of its, design and deployment and the context of its deployment, then we would have accountability to stakeholders. And the system at any time would be open to scrutiny. And I think that is as much as we can do in terms of risk-aversive accountability design, co-design, if you like. But then, of course, we have these collective awareness platforms and interactive systems that allows embedded intervention by citizens and stakeholders about the design choices. And that has to be not just lip service, but really a reality. And for it to be a reality, it has to be architected in the design support platform and in the design workflow and habits and so on. So there's a lot there. Thank you. Well, there you go. Yes, I presume that if cities and universities merge as institution structures, we could have the basis of a very good collaboration access, a strong alliance. And in fact, this is happening in, I understand it's happening already.
It's happening.
I know
it
it's
could
happening.
Be strengthened. It's very important
to
create this triple or quadruple helix structure.
The triple helix.
And we should strengthen that. And there again, Horizon comes together
That's
with
right.
the
I need to hand over to my boss.
Funds. Yeah.
But I just has, it's already happening in Reading. I work with Reading Borough Council, etc., and I know that other colleagues work with the city, and the whole ecosystem has to work together in order to create a thriving, as you said, a thriving city and urban environment. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.